Hey all, welcome back to our first episode following the relaunch of our podcast. Dhruv and I are glad to share that we have rebranded our podcast to now be Insight, formerly A Future in Finance, giving you some insight on Indian/South Asian professionals spanning across industries who have become successful in their respective fields. We hope to inspire you all to follow your own path and learn from those that have conquered much in their lives. That said, today I'm honored to invite Amit Tyagi here with us today. Mr. Tyagi currently works as the head of systemic trading at Ovada Capital and has been a managing director at several other firms, including JP Morgan and Deutsche Bank. But we will hear the rest from him first. So, Mr. Tyagi, for our first question, we just wanted to ask, can you walk us through your journey in the world of trading and finance? What initially drew you into the field, and what sparked your interest in this?
Sure. Glad to be part of this. I think it's a great idea what you guys are doing. Um, my journey was unplanned. It was. I just fell into it. I was trained as a computer engineer and then computer science. I did an MBA in finance, but that was more an afterthought. My first job, was selling computers. I started up. After my computer engineering degree, when I finished my undergrad, that's like we are talking 95 or so, and there were not enough jobs in India in software, which is what I wanted to really do. So I started selling computers, and that's actually helped me become more, you can say, more outspoken, be able to go and knock on any door. Those sort of prepared me for what is to lie ahead, even though I had no idea what lied ahead at that time. There was no concept of planning at that time. There was no internet too. So everything was just verbal or going to the library reading the books. So when I went to graduate school, is that I did computer science in graduate school as well, and like as expected, I joined a developer role initially with a Reuters, which is an information company, and then I got approached by a prop firm, a hedge fund. Well, I wouldn't say hedge fund, more a proprietary firm who needed a developer who could work on Linux, C++. This is like late 90s, and then that was the start of the internet, and everybody was trying to go towards JavaScript, Java, and active pages and all that. They couldn't find somebody who could do some, like in the back end, fine tuning of the systems needed for electronic trading. So I got that job, and then I was a developer on the trading desk. And from the developer, I went into more research, trying learned everything on the job, and then moved to Deutsche Bank as running my own book. That was the start of my trading career. Why I chose to make that switch is it was just I stayed in the same place as the traders. Of course, the approach was different. I was more analytical, like doing computers programming, and they were still on the phone. We are talking early 2000s. It was start of the transition from those phone trading, pit flow trading towards more electronic trading. And by chance, with no prior planning, my skills at that time lended me those kind of opportunities. And so when I was offered that kind of a role, I jumped onto it because it seemed like a glamorous job and my seemed more highly paid from outside. So I made a choice which anybody else would have made too. And then I moved, but have never left my roots as a developer, as a computer science person. And to date, I use those skills.
That's awesome. I think it's a very good embodiment of almost this rags to riches, where you're kind of like, I don't know, you're in this computer engineering phase, and you're very different, very different, I would say, from what you'd see as a trader doing in the modern day. Even though they're now becoming very similar with the advancement of technology, I think at least, especially in the '90s, to be a computer engineer and make that switch is very drastic. But I would love to hear a little bit about as a trader. what does almost your day to day look like? Like, what are your? If, would you say they're very strenuous days, or would that switch from computer engineering? Were you expecting a heavier workload, or just can you expand a bit on that as well?
Sure. I mean, trading as a profession is never ending. There is no real. It has two facets to it, right? When the markets are live and open, you need to act and react uh, as the market is moving. But then the rest of the time, if you're not acting and reacting to it, you need to think about how I'm going to act and react tomorrow or day after, or what I think will happen. So there is a lot of research involved, also a lot of prep involved in being always prepared. So it's not just today you prepare for next day and next week and next month and how you orient your positions. In my particular case, I am a short-term trader, so I don't really think too far out. It's more about being ready, like reacting more closely, even though now programs and everything trades for you, but you still have to parameterize the models and all. So it's not a job a work or a vocation where you say, okay, I'm done at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, or you hear about those investment banking people work 18 hours and 16 hours. No, so it's a 24, in your head, it's a 24-hour thing. And of course, it's stressful because you're responsible for the trust your investors put in your. It's a big responsibility to have that kind of investor trust on your shoulder all the time. So it's also very gratifying, like in the sense that you get to see the results of your work quite quickly compared to other businesses. But of course, there is stress involved, and there is a lot of patience, perseverance, and quite a few characteristics needed to succeed.
That's awesome. Yeah, thank you so much. And Drew, I'll hand it over to you as well.
Yeah. So, given your background in computer science and computer engineering, how have you seen technology evolved in the trading industry? Of course, with the rise of quantitative trading and all that. And what do you think the future will hold, especially with the rise of AI and how that's becoming more integrated into our day to day lives in the corporate world?
Interesting question because I would say still, I would just, if pressed to give a number, I would say 25-30% of trading is still happening on Excel spreadsheets, even now. And I don't see that going away also for the next 10 years because many people are more conversant with it versus, say, some AI models or anything. So, and when we say trading, are we in finance in many subsection? I guess you guys have chosen to focus on trading for this conversation, maybe, or maybe because of my background. But there's a lot of other substreams of finance which actually do not require so much use of technology. They can be done, but slowly technology is creeping into them. But there's a lot of decision making, individual decision making, which is in spite of all the news you hear about AI and all that. At certain level, when you have to really put you can say, the stove to the fire, that's when a human element comes in. So technology has evolved substantially from the time when I started. It was more about we used to be like, for example, the futures, the index futures trade on CME, which is in Chicago, and then stocks trade in New York. They do that right now too, even 25 years later. And then what was to connect them? The speed of that connection went from 10 gig fiber optic, like a telecom line, was like a revolution when I started. And now it's became fiber optics. So like you can send a packet of message between Chicago and New York, which is in Brooklyn, NY4, now 6-7 milliseconds round trip. When I started, it used to be about 45 milliseconds. So, and that's just physical engineering between the two connections. And then there's examples of laser, like NASDAQ, for example, is hosted in Carteret, New Jersey. And then if you want to listen to NASDAQ data, you cannot be in all places running your model or running your trading simulations. You need to be in one place. So now, about 5 years ago, 6-7 years ago, they started deploying laser between Brooklyn and Carteret. They couldn't deploy it over distance because laser needs a straight geographical line of sight to be able to do this. So those kinds of technology from 45 mil to going to laser, where we are talking sub-milliseconds kind of a things. So that's how technology has evolved. And we're just talking physical connection. Then obviously the machine sizes, right? Number of CPUs allows you to handle a lot more market data coming in. As the number of stocks keep on increasing on the exchanges, which we're listing, that means more market data coming into them, any machine which is trying to evaluate that, how to handle that. We have used to have very little memory space, and now how to keep that memory. You cannot access the disk every time you want to get information, so you shouldn't be writing to the disk. So from like a socket, you can say from a switch or a machine like an IP, a socket coming in to what is to your process, which is like a virtual memory, like that connection that has changed from like shared memory, and I don't want to go deep down into tech stack, but it has evolved substantially. And to your second part of the question, with the new advancements, AI in trading, yes, AI getting used more towards prediction because the job of the AI is prediction versus other kinds of techniques in the past. But is that being successful? I haven't seen a big evidence that it has been successful so far.
Yeah. It's very interesting to hear how much humans are still required in order to trade because, there's this very famous video on YouTube about Citadel, the big hedge fund, and it's like the tagline in that video is that none of the humans do the work. It's all computers, and the only thing they're doing at all times is just changing the program to make it more efficient, which obviously, as you're saying, isn't entirely true. So that's very interesting to hear, and we'll see how it holds up
Means
as technology
they're right
advances.
about that computers. Yeah, means they're right. The computers form the order, send the order, receive the fail, change the risk. Computer does all that. But who designs the software which does that? That is what I'm referring to. And who designs how the order will travel from a machine sitting one machine among thousands to a particular machine sitting somewhere else is humans, again the programmers or the researchers, or and then when who is making sure that the design of those algorithms is being done, that's still humans.
Mm-hmm.
uh, the humans can choose to use different techniques, but ultimately a human has to decide which technique to use.
Yeah.
But once the process is established, the repetitive action of that process, like, is obviously machine driven. So when
Yeah.
Citadel says that, they're talking about, or any other hedge fund says that, they're talking about how those processes already designed, refined, researched, back tested, are being run by computers day in day out. No human intervention.
Yeah. On another note, what advice would you give to young people interested in pursuing careers in finance and trading, especially those who come from non-traditional backgrounds?
Yeah, that's a tough question because if you look back, like if you look at the previous crop of most successful traders, they had a degree in history, philosophy, economics, English, and they've proven to be very successful traders. More recently, you see more like math, computer science, and all that. But we have to like say we have to look at it. Finance is not just trading. I'm gonna make it more like a bigger. Finance has private equity. Finance has investment banking. Finance has a lot of that. So for and even within trading, there's fundamental trading, there's quantitative trading, there's derivative trading, there's commodity trading. There's a lot of different types of trading. So if you want to do, for example, fundamental trading, right, based on I don't think A means AI you can use to go through those 10Ks and other kind of reports, but you really need a sense of accounting, understand everything about a company's balance sheet and income sheet and all that. So knowing computer science is not exactly helpful, right, in that particular kind of trading. And that's the long-term trading, and that's what the most of the asset managers are. That's what most of the big names you hear about is more fundamental based. Now you take it back to quantitative trading, and then okay, you need computer science. You don't really need accounting, maybe. So like it's tough to say one particular you. I shared my journey with you guys. Like there is no one path. As long as you are excited about what you want to do, and you cannot. I don't think anybody can plan for a certain career 6 years from now. But if you take the courses you're interested in, you'll be good at it, and you will find a way to apply them. Uh, that would be my most reasonable suggestion, because as I shared with you, different street type of trading requires different type of discipline, different types of training. I mean,
That's
Yeah.
yeah. I to add on, I just wanted to ask, since you were mentioning stuff about philosophy majors, English majors, math majors, computer science majors, all of these different types of people with different backgrounds are now going into this one centralized field. It's almost like a funnel that's happening, right? So, do you think that someone with an English major, for example, compared to someone with a math major, would their skill sets, or they're of course very different skill sets that they're coming into with their prior education, but would you say that um, there's a particular set of skills that might put one on edge on in comparison to another, or do you think that there's different ways to utilize these skills in maybe across the field?
means going from liberal arts into this. For example, let's say if someone is doing liberal arts, right? They have an edge probably in understanding businesses in its all dimensionality, like 300, 360. So they may be good at investment banking. Of course, they need to take some accounting courses, maybe to understand all the balance sheet income sheet is. But they will be good at that. They will be able to raise money, for example, capital raise money. They may be better at that. So would I say that math doing these like science subject is more? That sounds like yeah. The easy answer is yes. If you do those subjects, then you can do quantitative trading better. But would you be able to do uh, more fundamental based trading? Not necessarily, right? Because you would have this type of the people who study science deeply, like math, physics, and all that, seem to be, in my experience, seem to be a little less open-minded versus liberal arts students. So that's why I advise younger people to say, to not to say, of course, if you study history, you will have a very, maybe a like a longer path to get to where it is, and you may not get the opportunities, right? Which, because majority of the people would think that a liberal arts degree would not be successful, but then you could be very good at sales trading, right? Because you know how to have relationships and communicate. So one degree over the other, that's hard to say. Like my journey has been, I can only reflect on my journey and advice. So my advice again is to pick if you really like to, you can take courses to prepare yourself for certain things. But it's important to be passionate about whatever you like.
That's
That's
awesome.
the key here. You can't
Yeah,
just go to a degree, I feel, and then be successful just because that degree lends itself. You may get the first job easily compared to the next guy who has followed his passion, but the second will be hard, or third will be hard, or going up it will be hard.
yeah, that's awesome, and yeah, thank you for that insight. I think kind of tying into this to this podcast very central mission. It's about South Asians and Indians, as I said, who've become extremely successful, or people who have just become very passionate, like yourself, about the respective field that they're in. I wanted to ask, how is your cultural heritage, or your background or ethnicity, how has it influenced the way you've approached your career, your decision making, your leadership? Was there something, I don't know, in your upbringing that you feel has been very monumental in shaping who you are in the modern day in your professional career?
Yes, I would say that means, but I wouldn't say just South Asian inheritance, being a first generation immigrant. makes a difference. You have nothing to lose and you have everything to gain. So you start from zero, and that's true for first generation immigrants across all races or ethnicities, right? So that's one thing. That's it's easier to be in a certain sense. I know it's and no, I'm not discounting you guys as second generation or third generation, but what I'm saying is that there's not much to lose, so people try harder and people make their own path. And since you can not make your own path without being passionate about that journey, most of the time it works. So, and as far as my specifically South Asian heritage is just we are used to not, we are used to being, we are used to the hard work involved. We are used to seeing our parents, um, and I'm not saying that's not true across other ethnicities, but in South Asian, I'm used to, and what I saw, it was a lot of hard work and basically providing, and the challenge of providing for your family and creating a comforting environment for your family pushed me to work harder and harder. Uh, as even in my younger days, and always partying was like less of a priority right from the beginning, versus my own generation, my own what I see in the next generation. So there was a certain, but that a lot of it has to do with being first generation immigrant rather than being a South Asian, I feel.
Yeah, that's
Yeah. Yeah, I
um
think Ranveer and I can definitely relate to that. I mean, as an immigrant, both of us are immigrants to the United States. You kind of have a chip on your shoulder, not only to prove yourself, but also to be of value to your family because you have all your relatives, your aunts, your uncles who are going to ask you how you're doing in school, what are you doing outside of school. There's a lot of pressure that comes with that. So I think the chip on your shoulder not only comes from, wanting to integrate into your environment, assimilate to the culture in the US because it's very different, but also that part of your heritage that you hold from being an Indian, especially because of the culture there with studying and, of like the IIT and how much pressure there is to do well on the entrance exam. And I think it does carry over even for people who are living in the US as immigrants. So
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. Agree.
yeah, I mean, yeah, Drew and I, as Drew mentioned, we're both first generation immigrants. So I think that pressure, I think I agree with you. In second and third generation immigrants, I do see that a little bit less, maybe because it's this idea of becoming Americanized, you could say, and almost meshing into the American culture. I think that as a first generation immigrant, I'm very connected to my roots. I speak Hindi, I speak Punjabi, I speak all these languages, as well as in comparison to people, if I go down to, I don't know, I go to the next town over and I'm looking at an Indian kid who's lived here and born and brought up here, very low percent chance that he's gonna speak, he's gonna speak Hindi and Punjabi or whatever Indian dialect. So I think that being a first generation immigrant has a big impact, and I think more so than actually being Indian itself. So I do agree with you on that part, and it's very interesting. Drew froze. I'm not too sure. Oh, I drew.
Oh, you can see me?
Yeah, you were frozen. Um,
Uh,
but overarchingly, those were some of the main questions we wanted to ask you, Mr. Tyagi. We just wanted to get an idea of, your background in finance, your background in, even as a computer engineer, and how, from what you've told us, it's helped you actually, and it's been almost a snake of a journey for you, and it's very interesting to see where you've ended up from where you started, and I think that how your background and ethnicity and your citizenship status has almost shaped the way you think, the way you act in your professional career is very interesting, and I think it's applicable to Indians across different host nations. So um, at least for me, I'd like to say a very, very heartfelt thank you for joining us today. I know it's very hard to, as you said, traders have a 24/7 job. I know it's hard for you to factor out, 30 minutes on a Friday night to sit down with two random high schoolers and have an interview. But we truly appreciate you taking the time and helping inspire the next generation to really follow their own path and become who they want to be.
Thank you. Happy to join. It was a pleasure.
So I think we can all drop off. Thank you so much, Mr. Tyagi. I really
Thank
appreciate
you.
it. Bye bye.
Hey guys, before we end today's episode, we want to give a big thanks to Mr. Tyagi for giving us a chance to get his insights. We also want to thank all of you for sticking with us until the end. With that being said, we hope you enjoyed, and until next time.